So there's a lot of talk in the tech world right now about sort of women,
Yeah.
Women in startups and maybe the unique challenges they have or something. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I'm listening to the chatter, of course, across Twitter and so on, and I'm following groups that I support, like Change the Ratio, that are adamantly trying to make the process easier and smoother for women to raise funding for their companies. I participate in a lot of organizations that help to support other female entrepreneurs. In New York City, there's a great one spearheaded by the founders of Guilt and Blip TV, Dina Kaplan and Alexandra of Guilt. But ultimately, I think the process is hard for everyone to navigate. We certainly have our own unique share of challenges. I mean, it's just intimidating, really, to go into a meeting with investors when they're all 20, 30 years your senior and there are no gender similarities. But I also think it's hard just to be young and raising capital. It's hard not to know enough about business when you're launching your own. So some problems are unique to us and some aren't.
So my theory is kind of that VCs talk a lot about pattern recognition when they're looking for investments, and I don't think, my theory is that sort of like they aren't explicitly kind of sexist, but it's just sort of like the prototype of like, of the founder, that like it's sort of the Mark Zuckerberg, the Bill Gates, sort of like young male
ingenue
hacker, and then so that sort of pattern recognition kind
Sure.
of can kind of work, I think, against people that aren't, whether it's gender, age, whatever the case might be.
But if you're smart and articulate and you know your product, I feel like nobody can argue with that. Sure. It's really easy to stereotype the young ingenue and to say that, this kid out of Harvard who's 20, who's willing to quit their job and to move to Silicon Valley is exactly who I want to invest in. More and more, I'm meeting people in New York City who are looking to invest in companies that are more niche and focused, but specific to the industry where the entrepreneur is from. I'm noticing this a lot in the fashion space, actually. Some friends of mine founded Rent the Runway, and they tell a really interesting story about going into VCs and trying to raise capital, and the VCs say, well, my wives would never pay to rent a dress, and it's because they're loaded, and their wives don't need to pay to rent a dress.
We call this I used to call this the radar golf problem, which is like all the VCs are like, God, there should really be like a golf ball that you can find with radar, and I'm like, dude, you're just like some rich dude who like is out of touch with like with like the normal people, right? Like I don't know. I mean,
golf.
Yeah, I know. So so it's like they're most of these people are like loaded, and they're not like the typical customer of these products. A lot of these products, right?
Right, but if you explain to them what it's like to be poor.
I always also found like, I mean, I've raised money a bunch of times, and
just a few.
And I mean, just the whole process of like going, like there's always like the climactic moment as you go in and you pitch usually the whole partnership. And I think the entrepreneurial world has been changing a lot in terms of the sort of the gender, age, et cetera, makeup, more diversity, but the VC world is much slower moving. And so like, I mean, I've just many times I'm sitting there and they're like, it looks like you're at the, some country club or whatever, like you're at the Augusta country club, I don't know what, it's like these like 40 well-coiffed white men or something. And, and it's kind of intimidating. Like, and just the whole format is intimidating in and of itself. I actually think it's kind of flawed because I'm not sure that like presenting well to 40 kind of grumpy people is correlates to starting a great product company, But
social media is unveiling the process, right? So it's no longer behind closed doors. I mean, I read forums on Quora every day about what it's like for other people going through the process now. And platforms like Quora and Twitter are making it a little bit more transparent. We read about stories, we see case studies, we know what works, what doesn't work. And all of a sudden, I think people are learning that, yes, we're pitching a bunch of very senior people who are only interested in the bottom dollar, future potential P&L, but at the same time, it's probably a lot easier now for men and women than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.